The Prologue. Our adoration is dressed with thanks. Even on this final road, burdened by the cross, he waits. Each station is a gift for contemplation, a moment to realize we need no longer fear. There is no place for dread. He waits for us, and in his grace lifts these stations far above the temporal. God cannot be constrained by time. What once was must always run concurrently. Thus we may trespass briefly on eternity by bending our perspective to this journey he is forever taking, an endless iteration of redemption. The first station. Jesus is condemned to death. Since Adam, excuses have slipped glibly from our hollow mouths. We prefer to shift the burden, gifting blame to others, careless of their innocence or complicity, so long as we are never held responsible or singled out for punishment. Jesus is not Adam. He plays a different part. When Pilate passes sentence, he lifts his head and holds our gaze steadily, begrudging us nothing. Of all men most innocent, he does not flinch beneath vicious condemnation. Of all men most pure, he does not shrink from vilification, but sees instead a chance to share the shackles of humanity. He holds our gaze, and we would now embrace oblivion most gladly, if only to escape the sight of every sin of ours, each selfish act, each petty word of spite, each coward's shrug, every abusive thing that we had thought forgotten or concealed, swarming to him like a fetid plague. He is condemned for our faults and flaws, blistered, bright with sores of our infecting. He turns smiling, silent, still. The second station. Jesus takes up his cross. This wood, they say, was good for nothing but a felon's cross. Its grains so gnarled, so knotted and contorted, once felled, there was no other use to which it could be put. It had grown since time began in Adam's garden. Its trunk was twisted, deformed by some monstrous thing coiling itself about the bole. Whether to crush it or support it, God knows. Why does he choose this dark cross to shoulder, when there are others, propped against the prison wall, rough-hewn but straight he could have taken? He could have left this cursed contraption to a mere malefactor. Yet he does not. Other men might flinch when faced by that which will effect their death. The barrage of bullets when called to charge, the whining missiles exploding on defenceless homes, the relentless march of incurable disease. He does not quail before this cross, but stretches his arms along its length as if to measure all his strength, and stoops beneath the beam to take its weight. Sweet Jesus! His back still runs with wounds the soldier's flails have cut into his flesh. The kiss of silk would be agony enough. Sweet Jesus! yet nothing but a sigh escaped his lips. He shifts the weight and makes his way along the road to Golgotha. In his wake, the dragging cross cuts a furrow in the dirt where runs the bloody sweat that comes from drudgery and toil, the curse of every man since Adam's fall. Jesus lifts his head, straining to bear the hardship and the pain, whilst all we do is stare. Our hands hang helplessly at our sides. The third station. Jesus falls for the first time. What makes his fall? The weight he carries, or the rough road? Perhaps the blood and sweat stinging his eyes with no means to wipe them clear. The Lord falls. In doing so, he excites the catcalls and the jeers from those whose sensitivity has deserted them, their imaginations dry and barren. He does not choose to fall. Weakness overcomes him, but in falling, he declares that our human frailty is his to share. He does not court mockery. He would have sought to make this journey with something of dignity, something heroically defiant, still intact. To fall so soon is a humiliation, and it is in humiliation that he stoops once more to bind himself to us. He picks himself up. He carries on, not oblivious to how they mock him, but determined, staunch, holding his course. The fourth station. Jesus meets his mother. To outlive one's child, the Greeks tell us, is the cruelest fate. But knowing a son has lost his life in a noble cause would help assuage such grief. Mourning an heroic end would bring some brightness. Jesus has no final public glory. His is the jeering opprobrium meted out to common felons. How can his mother distill from this anything but a desperate, aching disappointment? Has he not failed? And in failure he is reviled, despised, abandoned. Was it for this she carried him, gave him life, nursed and nurtured him? Should she be blamed for bringing him to this doomed conclusion? Perhaps if she had denounced those adolescent conversations with his God as simply voices in his head, deluded fruits of a fevered imagination, she might have steered him down a quieter path. Mild mediocrity has its attractions. A painter surely may eschew more vibrant hues for monochrome and still be great. Not every melody needs a symphony. He locks his eyes onto his mother and caresses her distress. A current flows. No longer stricken, his mother knows, we know, that just to have loved a child is a gift most blessed. The glory is not dimmed by circumstance, nor dulled by outcome. If our children live their lives aligned to God, It matters not if events conspire to stifle aspiration. As his eyes meet hers, that extraordinary love which each family can kindle is quickened, igniting in us gratitude beyond measure. The fifth station, Simon of Cyrene helps Jesus carry his cross. Nothing prepared Simon for how his day fell out. Thus, chance trips us up. One moment we drift within the predictable, confined by circumstances of our own determining. Sitting within the light thrown by a single candle, we are oblivious to the shadows massing behind us until we're spun about to face the enormity of our situation. Simon will never again be comfortable. He has been touched by too much to ever again rest easily. God knows there are millions like him who have rubbed against suffering so sharp it scars their surviving. Yet survive they do. Simon carries regret, the shame of the bystander. He carries rage because he lacked the courage to step up before he was pressed. And despite the way others will fate him, he despises himself for those small, intrusive thoughts which dulled his service. I shall be late home. I am not dressed for this. What if I am seen in this train of malefactors? Even at that point, when confronted by his God, he is aware, primarily, of the nuisance of it all. How ordinary, how blessed, that even from petty preoccupations we may be jolted, thrust beneath the cross, and left to live to tell another day. The sixth station, Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. In the face of great suffering, too many of us are erased, our personalities too weak, too slight, too insubstantial to endure. Like poorly dyed cloth, we are bleached by exposure to cataclysmic forces. Yet there are others who are defined by suffering, who find a certain stature, who gain nobility impossible to ignore. They reflect this road to crucifixion. She is the first. We do not know her name, only the pseudonym, Veronica, the true image. Whether on her handkerchief or her countenance, it is no matter. He gives her his features to reflect. A face cast for endurance, not resignation. Facing squarely whatever ordeal is dealt. His sacred impression is a gift, found in countless thousands the world over, countenances reflecting his features, carrying courage abroad. The seventh station, Jesus falls for the second time. We trust too often in our own strength. We believe too rashly that we can manage. It is an arrogance. Does Jesus feel the same bleak sense of desolation when he falls again. He knows too well that this weakness is capitulation to a human frailty. No divinity coursing through his veins gives his muscles the lift he needs. He falls, and the dull pain that comes when one contemplates surrender surges over him, envelops him. The gladiator stumbling to his last fight. The athlete, when the stabbing pain makes defeat seem sweeter than victory. The patient, succumbing to a terminal disease. All who taste the bitterness of hopelessness, the collapse of perseverance, know that he, falling for the second time, shares their despair. Is there nothing too low for him to stoop to? Dear God, to find you, even when your face is ground in the dirt, is beyond our deserving. The 8th station. Jesus comforts the women of Jerusalem. The women of Jerusalem cry out, "Our brothers were slain in Bethlehem 30 years before. Is there no respite?" Spin the globe, and the whirling winds shriek the same lament. Women cradle their lifeless infants at their shriveled breasts. Women scrub their own blood from their ravaged skirts. Women weep. They cannot halt the spread of poison, the seeping hatred that brutality seeds within their womb. Is there no end to suffering, self-inflicted by a twisted humanity? What is there in manhood to revere when it manifests itself in such calculated cruelty? What is it in men that so many only snatch a restless peace on the back of subjugated women? The women of Jerusalem look to Jesus for comfort. They give him the last of their hope, as the starving might share the last of their seed corn. He does not take it. He cannot germinate their dream. He can give no succor to their longing for liberation. For he, like them, like us, is bound by human destiny. But know this: if we weep for each other, we weep for him, our racked and tortured brother. And if we weep for him, the tears wrung from us might one day run in such torrents, all human malice will be swept away. Until that day, all we can do is share with him the impotence of caring. The 9th station. Jesus falls for the 3rd time. Jesus falls again. There is to be no other ending. There will come no rescue, no reprieve. Nor now would he wish it. Exhaustion has wasted him. He desires only rest, even that rest which only comes with death. He falls. But even in collapse, God's plan is fulfilled. To be broken is not to be worthless. The history of man began with a fall. This fall completes the pattern. To be broken is not to be useless. In wasted weariness, lost in the desert places, with hope only a mirage on the long horizon, we can still surrender to God's purpose. It is not for us to comprehend how God will work anything so piteous to the good. It is for us to trust, even as we lie sobbing in the dust, that our destitution will lead to restitution. A fall is a prelude to a rising, as dusk anticipates the dawn. Others haul Jesus to his feet, take his cross and drop it in the pit made ready. Resistance is futile when it delays the inevitable. He is ready. The 10th station. Jesus is flogged. Oppressors know the value of our vanity. It is a fragile thing, often clothed with flimsy layers worn against exposure. To snatch away these trappings is a calculated act by a malign aggressor, intent on degrading those already doomed. There was a concentration of humiliation at the camps before the gassing. Prisoners are routinely numbered, nameless. To strip a man renders him pathetic. He will shrink instinctively to hide his nakedness, and his tormentors will strut more confidently in the pressed uniforms and flowing robes of state. Civilized people do not subscribe to ritual degradation. Instead, we smooth with balm another's wounded dignity when flayed by savage words, offering a dressing for their cruel excoriation. But we do nothing for this man. Yet, as they tear his covering and expose him to their leering, we see his nakedness is nothing to flinch from. It is a gift. He stands quite passive, a man with none of Adam's shame. He displays no scorching embarrassment, for his pure humanity has nothing to conceal. Suddenly, we know that to stand naked before God need never again mean wretchedness. The 11th station. Jesus is nailed to the cross. We dare not watch. If we see what they are doing to him, our imaginations will be scarred forever. As it is, we know too well what terrible cruelty humankind is capable of inflicting. We know the history of humanity runs red with the blood of the innocent and resounds with the screams of the suffering. Most of us have never perpetrated evil of this nature, but when civilization looses its restraint, we know how readily barbarity reconfigures even those noted for living gently. We dare not watch, but we cannot help but hear. There is nothing to muffle the hammer's blows, reverberating through the centuries as nails are driven through flesh into hard wood. No screams, no imprecations, his lips merely writhe with silent words of forgiveness. Although we cannot believe we would ever deal such cruelty ourselves, humankind too often is anything but kindly. Politicians in palaces dream of genocide, sipping their morning coffee. Youths from one patch will slice vengeance off the boy who slips across their line. Husbands and wives put their feet up, plotting domestic malice. Sweet Christ, save us from ourselves. Sweet Christ, let the darkness of our souls die with you. Sweet Christ, if you do not die, all hope of saving humankind is dead. Jesus, we take what you give us, the gift of your life. The hammer sits in our hands. The nails are held straight between our fingers. We need your death so we might live. We did not know it would be this terrible. Forgive us. The 12th station, Jesus dies. Death is not to be feared. How can it be when he has gone before? At worst, it is merely a cessation. The heart's reflex ceases. All function, starved of oxygen, is stilled. No spark, no impulse, a stopping. And yet mortality naturally resists death. Living seeks its own continuance. His life's thread is stretched to breaking point. A string so tight, one touch of the bow will snap it. And snap it does. Nerves scream. With a cry to tear the heavens, he dies. Even in acute distress, he lets us know he feels the utter loneliness of dying. He shares it, and so dispels it. If it is natural to feel fearful at the end, there can be no ignominy. He is there before us. The desolation of death is fleeting. For as his echoing cry shakes the hills, we hear a new forged sound, a shout of triumph, strong, defiant, as from the summit of his mortality he leaps. We see now why his arms are pinned outstretched. They are the pinions of an angel, spread in flight, ready to soar to heights beyond our mortal reckoning. Grant us, dear Lord, the privilege of a good death, aware, awake, blessed with the space to manage our departing. Of rites of passage, the most solitary, let us gift our death to those living, left behind, as he bequeathed his mother to his friend, careful to the last. Dying is a giving up, a giving back. Our spirit is but lent, and once surrendered, leaves us only for a moment lonely. The 13th station. Jesus is taken down from the cross. How limp and unresponsive his body is. His friends are so gentle as they prise the nails from the wood, drawing them carefully from the running wounds. But there is no need. All feeling is gone. They could be as brutal as his executioners. It would make no difference. This body is no more than a set of limbs, ungainly jointed, collapsed upon itself, as inanimate as a broken puppet. They lay him on his mother's lap in piteous parody of her lost nursling. She lifts the thorns from his brow and seeks to smooth away the lines of agony still etched across his face. She bends to kiss his head. Her lips might rest on stone. If possible, she would weep him clean, but the hardening blood is too fixed for tears to lift. Others might set up a screaming lamentation, strangling the air with the ululation of professional mourners, a ritual wailing and a rending of garments. She offers instead a simple dignity, uncomprehending but accepting. She sighs, aching for her child. She shudders. How rootless and directionless life is when love is cut adrift. His friends come forward now, detaching themselves from the mute crowd to join his mother and the young man on whom she leans. No one in authority now cares who his followers are. The body can be accorded all the rights they like. The man is dead. Grieving is the most impotent of emotions. The 14th station. Jesus is laid to rest in the tomb. There are times when we crave oblivion, when to buckle and fall into numbness, incapable of any sensibility, is more attractive than any hope of heaven. Only a lingering recognition that to do so would be ignoble stays our hand from self-slaughter. We are not so bleached by living as to wish to stain others with the blood of our suicide. But the dream of fatal accident, a swift snuffing of life, remains alluring. We do not even care for our day to end, draped in sunset's gorgeous pall. We long for fog as thick as blindness. And in that fog we find him, entombed before us, already shrouded, sealed, so beautifully still we weep with desperate desire for the same dead end. Until something stirs. Yes, even in this lowest state, he finds the grace to force us to the naked truth. God with us. Even in oblivion, there is Emmanuel, and all shall be well.